Welcome to another special episode, the second part of the Brandenburg Commandos. In this episode, I will tell you the rest of this unit's history, from the year of 1941 until the end of the war. And we will also get to know the most important men in this unit. And so, we continue the timeline in 1941. Barbarossa. As we just saw in the last episode, on the 28th of June of 1941, Brandenburg members of the 8th Company in the 8th Panzer Division, Spearhead, crossed the bridge on Soviet looted trucks, took the Guards by surprise, and then held this position for 2 hours against Soviet counterattacks, until they were relieved by the panzers. Here, the company commander, Lieutenant Hasn-Wolfram Knaak, was killed and posthumously promoted to captain and awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. The commando's action on the city of Daugavpils the next day did not succeed. On the 13th of July, Oberleutnant Siegfried Grabert, who had captured the Newport locks and the water pumps in Belgium in 1940, and he also captured the Yugoslavian Vardar Bridge near Axiopolis in April of 1941, was tasked now with taking over the command of 8th Company from the deceased Knaak and capture the bridge over the river Luga on the road to Leningrad. Also the Ivanovskoye Dam, and an airfield attached, with the result of only one injured Brandenburger commando in an action we will see in detail when we arrive in the normal episodes of the Eastern Front. Timeline: year of 1942, Caucasus and beyond. In 1942, the Shamil Company of Brandenburg Commandos, disguised as NKVD officers, caused confusion and panic behind the lines of the Red Army in the Maikop area in the Caucasus. From June of 1942 to February of 1943, Sonderkommando Dora was active also in the theaters of war in North Africa, in Egypt and Libya, where the commandos conducted operations against the Allied supply lines. A special command of the Brandenburgers was deployed under the command of Captain Ladislaus or László Almásy as part of Operation Salam. The subsequent Operation Condor under Captain Johannes Epler was able to obtain information from the city of Cairo for the Africa Corps for a few weeks in the year of 1942. The Dora Company in June of 1942 advanced around 4,000 kilometers across the Sahara Desert from the Libyan capital of Tripoli to Lake Chad in Central Africa. Later on, all Brandenburg personnel was evacuated by plane to Germany after the Axis defeat in Africa in the year of 1943. The Mahmud de Brandenburger Company was supposed to sabotage oil production areas in the Kurdish area in 1943, but failed in the implementation due to a wrong dropping unit. Another operation was the deployment of 2 weather teams under the leadership of the Defense Department in the Arctic on the Spitsbergen archipelago in the Svalbard Islands. Year of 1943. Transformation to a regular division. At the turn of the year of 1942 to 1943, there was a rethinking of the Brandenburg Special Unit for various reasons. Often the front commanders saw these units that were only subordinate to them for a short time as a kind of fire brigade that they deployed at the crisis points on the front. Due to the gradually precarious situation on the fronts, and also in order to compensate for the large personnel losses, the unit had to be used increasingly as a normal front troop. However, this never happened in a closed manner, but only by battalion or a regiment size. Also, on the other hand, there were higher officers of the Sonderverband themselves, who wanted to be more than mere administrators of battalions and regiments that only formed a unit on paper. Last but not least, there was also a clear competition with the SS from the year of 1942 onwards, in a clear power struggle that the SS won in matters of command and espionage. Therefore, the newly formed Brandenburg Division was placed directly under the Wehrmacht command staff the 1st of April of 1943 as a regular intervention reserve. From this point on, command missions were carried out either by units of the Waffen-SS, the Kurfürst Regiment, or the Front Reconnaissance Troop No. 2, which took over a large part of the command-trained personnel of the Brandenburg Special Unit, 350 only in the Waffen-SS hunting units alone. Timeline 1943 and later on 44, the Dodecanese Campaign. The British Dodecanese Campaign from September the 8th of 1943 to the 22nd of October of 1943 was an operation during World War II with the aim of the conquest of the Italian Aegean Islands. The aim of this landing operation was to occupy the Dodecanese Islands in the southeastern Aegean Sea, in the Mediterranean of course, as soon as possible after the capitulation of Italy, in order to use them as a base for operations against the Balkan countries that were now controlled by Germany, in particular for airstrikes on the Romanian oil fields of Ploiesti. The Coastal Hunter Division of the Brandenburg Division aided the Wehrmacht 22nd Division Luftlandwehr in defeating both the Italians and the British. For those of you who have seen the movie Captain Corelli's Mandolin with Nicolas Cage, the script of this movie is based on this operation. As in many similar cases, the Germans committed war crimes by murdering in cold blood many Italian soldiers who had already surrendered. Timeline 1944 and 1945, the final years. After some German units had already been deployed to fight partisans in the occupied territories of the USSR, all units in the Balkans from the spring of 1943 received the same order. The 1st, 2nd and 4th regiments were thus involved in costly battles against partisans in Croatia, Serbia and Greece, while the 3rd regiment performed similar tasks in southern France and Italy. From August of 1944, the Parachute Hunter Battalion, Brandenburg, was deployed in Romania, where it took part in the occupation of Bucharest. However, the unit was trapped by the Red Army units and completely wiped out within a few days' fighting. From the end of September of 1944, the regiments of that division on the Tisa and Danube rivers were engaged in defensive battles against the Red Army, even before they had arrived in Belgrade for the planned regrouping of forces. During the Soviet offensive on the Yugoslav capital, the Belgrade operation, parts of these units were trapped and suffered considerable losses before they could break out to the German lines. After that, Army Group E retreated slowly through southern Hungary. At this time, the combat strength of the division was only a mere half a regiment, which is why it was tactically integrated in the 71st Infantry Division. To freshen up, the remainder of this division was relocated to East Prussia between the 12th of December and the 20th of December of 1944. The division there merged with the Greater Germany Division to form the Greater Germany Armored Corps, the Grossdeutschland. Later on the 13th of January, the division was loaded into the Aris military training area of East Prussia for transport to the Litzmannstadt area in Lodz. After the start of the Soviet offensive of the 15th of January of 1945, the large formation fought through the Wattergau to the Silesian Lusatia, where it joined the Army Group Center. From the beginning of March to mid-April of the same year, This division was in the Weißwasser area on the Lusatian Neisse. On the 16th of April of 1945, the Red Army launched the Battle of Berlin with an attack on a very broad front. The division was encircled in the Rothenburg-Penzig area, north of Görlitz. On the 20th of April, she managed to break out to Lubau. After the remnants of the division had fought for Bautzen, they were taken by train to the Meritz-Ostrau area in the Reich Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia on the 3rd of May of 1945. At the beginning of May, units of this division were still fighting there near Olomouc and retreated as far as the Deutsch-Brod area. After the Wehrmacht surrendered, part of the division marched to the west, while other parts simply disbanded. A large part of them went into Soviet captivity in Tabora. Members of the division were often murdered by the Czech population. And to summarize, according to the website weaponsandwarfare.net, Brandenburgers were used in many operations and in many areas. They operated in Denmark during the invasion, in Norway in what was called the Unternehmen Vidar during the invasion, in Finland, also in Spain in what was called the Unternehmen Felix, the planned seizure of Gibraltar, which was never achieved. In France, in Belgium, the Netherlands, in England, notably prior to the abortive Unternehmen Seeloewe, the planned invasion of England, in Italy, in Greece, especially the airborne landing on Crete, in Romania, in Bulgaria, Yugoslavia and the rest of the Balkans, in Russia, in Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, Jordan, Iran, Iraq and other countries of the Middle East, Afghanistan, India and even South Africa. The Brandenburgers used whatever was available or seemed appropriate to them. In the early years, they had to do with various weapons which were not standard issue with the Wehrmacht, such as the Schmeisser MP-28-2, a submachine gun, and the Steyr MP-16 machine pistol. As the unit grew in size and the operations changed to large-scale motorized and later mechanized infantry assaults, the armament increasingly changed to standard Wehrmacht issue. At the same time, dedicated special operations weaponry, such as sound-suppressed guns, became available. Foreign equipment was often used. For example, during the operations in the Finnish and Russian border area, the Finnish Suomi Model 1931 and the Soviet PPSH-41 submachine guns were issued. In 1943, organic squad weapons included the Walther P38 pistol, the MP40 submachine gun, the Sten Mk2S sound-suppressed submachine gun, the MP43 assault rifle, sometimes with a sound suppressor, the Moser Kar 98K rifle, the MG42 general-purpose machine gun, rifle grenades, egg and stick hand grenades. The heavy weapons platoon provided more machine guns, even an 81mm Rheinmetall GRW34 mortars, the 105mm LG42 recoilless rifles, and 20mm Flak 38 anti-aircraft guns. On covert operations, all men were issued a poison pill to avoid capture. Unit setup changed widely according to the mission, from two-man teams over companies of about 300 men, the most usual deployment size, to even complete battalions. A squad had 12 men. Methods of insertion also varied. Some of the more bizarre missions included the flight of the Afghanische Company of about 20 men via civilian aircraft in neutral markings from Austria to Afghanistan, 2 tons of equipment, including a disassembled 20 by 138mm B Rheinmetall Flak 30 anti-aircraft gun, had earlier been smuggled in the country in 30 diplomatic pouches. Another interesting one was the covert insertion of a 5-man team via U-boat to South Africa in the year of 1943. While Admiral Canaris and other leaders of the Abwehr are believed to have created the Brandenburger as a means of getting at an efficient private army, this idea soon failed. Most members of this unit, while not necessarily fanatical loyal to Hitler and his Nazi ideology, were extremely patriotic and nationalistic. Many of them had lived abroad when the war started and reached Germany on dangerous and even adventurous ways, breaching the British blockade only to serve their country. These men were not loyal to the head of the Abwehr, but to their immediate commanders and their country only. In 1943, when being enlarged to division size, its mission was changed to provide an always available force under direct command of the Oberkommando des Heeres, the OKH, or the Army High Command. After the failed assassination of Hitler in the year of 1944, operations of the Abwehr were delegated to the SD. In September of 1944, it was decided that the unit's special operations capability was no longer required. The division Brandenburg was transformed into a conventional motorized infantry division, while 1,800 of its soldiers joined the ranks of Otto Skorzeny's Jagdverbände, combat units with similar missions that were earlier carried out by the Brandenburgers. For example, Operation Panzerfaust on October of 1944 was the kidnapping of Hungarian dictator Miklos Horthy's son, and we will see it in the regular episodes of the Eastern Front. Different sources say that the Brandenburg Commandos, after the war was over, joined either Great Britain or were employed as mercenaries by some African countries, and even the French Foreign Legion in Vietnam. Famous Brandenburg Commandos. Oberleutnant Wilhelm Walther. Wilhelm Walther was born in 1910. And he received the Ritterkreuz des Eisernen Kreuzes, or the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, on the 24th of June of 1940, as Oberleutnant and Sturmtruppführer in 4 Company, Baule-Bataillon 800. The unit was stationed at Brandenburg Havel and was formed on the 15th of December of 1939. The first units of the company moved to the west in February of 1940. Prior to the invasion of the Low Countries, the Brandenburgers were given the task of capturing the Roermond and Burgenemond bridges. The railway bridge at Genep was captured by Oberleutnant Walther personally, with 8 other members of his squad. Walther and 2 other members of the group were disguised as Dutch military police, and the other 6 were in German uniforms. To the Dutch side of the frontier, the appearance of 9 men on the bridge aroused no suspicion, for it seemed that 3 fully armed Dutch policemen were escorting 6 disarmed German soldiers. Each of the prisoners were carrying concealed machine pistols strapped to their chest under their unbuttoned overcoats and egg grenades in their pockets. Then they made their assault, successfully seizing the bridge and disabling the detonators. Minutes later, the first of 2 troop trains carrying the units of the 256th Infantry Division rolled across the bridge. Rittmeister Hasn-Wolfram Knaak, the son of a director of the Magdeburg Fire Society, Knaak joined the Corps Baltia, Königsberg, in 1932. He later opposed the Nazi appropriation of the corps in 1933. He was arrested several times with other corps brothers by the Secret State Police and the Assault Department, and was only released through the intervention of his mother, because she knew Edmund Heinz, who was the SA Obergruppenführer, who also knew her husband as a regimental comrade, and then he went to Breslau. In 1934, he became a flag junior in Potsdam in the 4th Prussian Cavalry Regiment of the 1st Cavalry Division of the Reichswehr. As company commander of the 8th Company of the Training Regiment, he was one of the first soldiers to cross the Soviet border during the attack on the Soviet Union in June of 1941. Knaak commanded the 10th Regiment of the 8th Panzer Division on June the 26th of 1941 and took the bridge over the river Dvina in the Latvian town of Daugavpils and fell at the age of 26. The success was of strategic importance for the advance of Army Group North from Knaak was therefore posthumously promoted to Rittmeister, which is Hauptmann or captain, and was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross on the 3rd of November of the following year of 1942. Oberleutnant Siegfried Grabert. Siegfried Grabert was born in 1916 and was a highly decorated Major de Reserve. He was responsible for the success of the following operations: the capture of the bridge, the pumping station, and the Isère river locks at Newport in 1940, the capture of the crossing of the Vardar River and the Iron Gates in the former Kingdom of Yugoslavia in 1941, the capture of the island of Eubea in Greece in 1941, and also the capture of the bridge on the Luga River, the Ivanovskoye Dam, and the airfield in the Soviet Union in 1941. He was also a recipient of the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaves. The Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross and its higher grade, the oak leaves, was awarded to recognize extreme battlefield bravery or successful military leadership. Siegfried Grabert was killed on the 25th of July of 1942 during a commando operation to avoid the destruction of a dam between Rostov and Bataisk. He was therefore posthumously promoted to Major de Reserve on the 6th of November of 1943 and was awarded the oak leaves to his Knight's Cross. His awards included the Ritterkreuz des Eisernen Kreuzes, that is, the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaves, the Deutsches Kreuz, the Wound Badge, the Close Combat Clasp, the Infantry Assault Badge, the Eisernes Kreuz or the Iron Cross, both of 2nd and 1st class. Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Oesterwitz. In October of 1940, Oesterwitz was commander of the 7th Company of the Brandenburg Regiment. In April of 1941, he took part in the Balkans campaign, and from June of 1941, he also fought on the Eastern Front. For the capture of an important bridge in August of 1942 at Bieloryanskaya during the advance into the Caucasus, he was awarded the German Cross in Gold, or the Deutsches Kreuz, on the 13th of December of 1942. While still a first lieutenant, he won the Knight's Cross on the 30th of April of 1943 for an action in the West Caucasus. He died, strangely enough, in peace in Innsbruck in 1999. His awards included the Ritterkreuz des Eisernes Kreuzes, the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaves, the Deutsches Kreuz, or the German Cross in Gold, die Medaille Winterschlacht im Osten 1941 to 1942, the Ostmedaille, or the Eastern Front Medal, the Eisernes Kreuz, the Iron Cross, both 2nd and 1st class. Oberleutnant Friedrich von-Koenen. The commander of a North African Abwehr unit during World War II, Friedrich von-Koenen was born in Danzig, which was Germany then and now Gdansk in Poland, on the 20th of June of 1916. He was raised in German Southwest Africa, which is now Namibia. He joined the Abwehr's emerging Brandenburg division in 1941 and assumed command of the Truppenkompanie, or the Tropical Company, which was later named Truppenabteilung Koenen, or Tropical Division Koenen, in North Africa. Its members were handpicked, they were fluent in other languages, and they used equipment acquired from Allied forces. For example, a British Spitfire aircraft. Deployed on numerous commando and reconnaissance missions, the Truppenkompanie served as an advance unit for Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps. One particular success occurred in February of 1943, when Koenen conducted a raid against American troops at the Battle of Sidi Bouzid in Tunisia under the command of Generaloberst Hans-Jürgen von Arnim, commander of the 5th Panzer Army, and captured 27 tanks and armored troop carriers, along with large supplies of guns and ammunition. A Knight's Cross was awarded to him later that year. Transferred to Yugoslavia, Koenen was killed in action on the 22nd of August of 1944 near Visegrad, which was Croatia and today is Bosnia-Herzegovina. SS Sturmbannführer Adrian Freiherr von Fölkersam. The Baron Adrian Freiherr von Fölkersam was born into an aristocratic Baltic German family with a lot of experience in the Russian Empire. Fölkersam's family left Russia after the Russian Revolution and settled in the country of Latvia. From 1934, he attended university in Munich, in Königsberg and Vienna. He studied economics, and at this time he became a member of the National Socialist Movement and the SA. Fölkersam joined the Brandenburgers in May of 1940, in order to form a special squad consisting of Volksdeutsche, ethnic Germans of Russian origin. His unit was active extensively during Operation Barbarossa. The most important action occurred in August of 1942 in the oil fields of Maikop, and we will see it, of course, in full in the normal episodes of the Eastern Front. In 1944, and as part of the SS Jagdverband Ost, Fölkersam transferred to the Waffen-SS. This unit was active on the Eastern Front and took part in the kidnapping of Hungarian dictator's son, Miklós Horthy, and the deposition of the Hungarian regent. In Operation Panzerfaust, during the Battle of the Bulge, Fölkersam was part of Operation Greif and worked closely with Otto Skorzeny. In January of 1945, laying on the Eastern Front, he fought against the advancing Red Army in central Poland. Adrian von Fölkersam was killed in action on the 21st of January of 1945 near Katowice, Poland. Oddly enough, in the same city where the Brandenburgers had their first operation back in 1939. At the time of his death, he was the SS Hauptsturmführer captain and commanded the SS Jagdverband Ost. His awards included the Ritterkreuz des Eisernen Kreuzes, or the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, the Medaille Winterschlacht im Osten 1941 and 1942, the Ostmedaille, or the Eastern Front Medal, the Eisernes Kreuz, or the Iron Cross, both second and first class. Also, the Wound Badge, both in black and silver, the Infantry Assault Badge, and the very strange and rare Honor Roll clasp of the Army. Ladislaus or László Almásy. Last of these very short biographies, I bring you this very special and different figure. The English patient, László Almásy, was a Hungarian aristocrat, a motorist, a desert explorer, an aviator, a scout leader, and a sportsman who served as the basis for the protagonist in both Michael Ondaatje's novel, The English Patient of 1992, and the movie adaptation of the same name of 1996. László was born in Borostyánka in Austria-Hungary in 1895, which today is the village of Wörnstein in Burgenland in the district of Oberwart in Austria. During World War II, he joined the 11th Hussars and fought against Serbia. And after being transferred to the Hungarian Imperial and Royal Aviation Troops, he was shot down over northern Italy, flying against the Italians in 1918. In the interwar period, he was a representative for the Steyr automobile Austrian car manufacturer, and in 1926 he convinced the wealthy prince Antal Esterházy to join him in driving a Steyr automobile from the town of Alexandria to Khartoum, or from Egypt to the Sudan, a feat that had not been accomplished until then. In 1931, he convinced Count Nando Zichy to purchase a de Havilland Gypsy Moth airplane in order to explore Libya from the air. But the plane crashed near Aleppo in Syria, flying through a storm, and they survived with a few scratches. Next year, in 1932, and with yet another sponsor, this time the Briton, Sir Robert Clayton, Almásy returned to the Libyan desert in an expedition to find the mythical Zerzura, which is the oasis of the birds, a group of 3 fertile valleys in the deep desert, located in the Gilf Kebir plateau. They did discover a valley with vegetation from the air, but could not reach it by car, and Sir Robert Clayton died of spinal poliomyelitis 2 months later, returning from the expedition. In 1933, Almásy managed to get yet another sponsor, this time Prince Kamal Eldin Hussein, for yet another expedition to the mythical Zerzura valleys. This expedition was successful and entered the valley discovered the previous year, and the explorers were finally convinced after consulting the local traditions in the Kufra oasis, stating that these valleys were indeed the fabled fertile valleys of the mythical Zerzura. At the end of the expedition, Almásy, together with Lodovico di Caporiacco, discovered the prehistoric rock paintings of Aindua in the Jebel Uweinat mountain, which is called the belly button of Africa, at a point where the countries of Libya, Egypt and the Sudan meet. Later, the same year, and in another expedition, Almásy discovered the Cave of Swimmers, also in the same mountain, and that has been famous through the film The English Patient, to the point that international efforts are being made to this day to protect these paintings from mass tourism. After 1935, Almásy was suspected by both the British and the Italian governments of being a spy and could no longer conduct his explorations. Already by 1940, and in World War II, Almásy was recruited into the Abwehr by Oberstleutnant Nikolaus Ritter, Chief of Air Intelligence of the Abwehr, the German military intelligence service. Almásy took over command of the unit Operation G in Libya after the failure of both missions, Plan El Masri and Operation Condor, which aimed at infiltrating German spies airdropped into Egypt. Almásy was in charge of the successful completion of Operation Salam, which placed German spies through the Libyan desert behind enemy lines in a very similar way to the Allied long-range desert group. Almásy was awarded the Eisernes Kreuz, or the Iron Cross, for Operation Salam, and returned to Hungary without further involvement with the Abwehr. There are accounts of Almásy helping Jews escape persecution, including the son of Olympic champion Jenő Fuchs, at the apartment of Bela Bartok in Budapest. Once, when an archer squad banged on the door of his apartment to look for Jews, he put on his German uniform, he pinned his Iron Cross, and sent them out in the midst of violent protests. Nevertheless, after 1945, he was arrested by the police, already under communist rule, and brought before a people's court on charges of war and anti-popular crimes. The main evidence against him was his own book, With Rommel's Army in Libya, in which he brushed with undisguised pride how he brought the spies into Egypt. In this way, his vanity proved almost fatal. He was saved from death by the testimony of the famous Orientalist Gyula Germanus. In 1947, however, he was arrested yet again, and the proceedings against him were terminated only through the intercession of the King of Egypt, King Farouk. After his release, he traveled to Cairo and settled permanently in the Zamalek district of the city. He died at the early age of 51 of dysentery. The life of László Almásy was much more adventurous than that of the character portrayed in The English Patient. The epitaph on his grave was erected by Hungarian aviation and desert enthusiasts in 1995 and honors him as a pilot, a Sahara explorer, and a discoverer of the Zerzura Oasis. And to close the episode, a movie of the Brandenburg Commandos was made in 1960. The film Division Brandenburg is a West German feature film that deals with two missions of the Brandenburg Division in Romania and in the Soviet Union. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, the first depicting a unit in the Eastern Front. If you like, please do leave a like and subscribe. Until the next episode, thank you very much as always for watching.